I learned something painful about modern weddings the day my daughter-in-law called the woman who sacrificed her entire life for our family embarrassing in front of 200 guests and somehow still expected us to smile politely while financing the celebration. My name is Thomas Grayson. I'm 69 years old, and my wife Carol is the strongest person I've ever known. She grew up poor, left school at 17 to help support her younger siblings, and spent most of her adult life putting everyone else ahead of herself without complaint. When our son Michael was born, Carol practically dedicated her existence to making sure he never felt the kind of insecurity we experienced growing up. She packed lunches by candlelight during power outages, worked overnight hospital shifts while attending community college classes during the day, and still somehow found energy to sit beside Michael every evening helping him study. Every opportunity that boy ever received came attached to sacrifices he never fully understood, because good parents usually hide the cost of love from their children. Michael became successful young. Corporate consulting, expensive suits, downtown apartment, luxury vacations. We were proud of him, genuinely proud. But success changes some people slowly. Not always into monsters. Sometimes just into cowards who start prioritizing comfort and image over loyalty. Then he met Vanessa. From the beginning, Vanessa treated life like a performance designed for social approval. Every dinner had to be photographed. Every gathering needed aesthetic coordination. She once complained that Carol's handmade holiday decorations looked too homemade for social media pictures. Another time, she suggested Carol stop telling childhood stories about Michael because they made him sound lower class. Small comments. Tiny cuts disguised as sophistication. Michael usually stayed quiet during these moments, and that silence slowly became its own form of betrayal. Still, Carol tried desperately to build a relationship with her because that's who she is. She invited Vanessa shopping, cooked her favorite meals, even altered her own old wedding dress by hand when Vanessa briefly considered using parts of it in the ceremony design. But nothing Carol did ever seemed enough because people obsessed with appearances rarely value sincerity. When wedding planning started, Michael admitted privately they couldn't afford the kind of luxury Vanessa wanted. The venue alone cost nearly $70,000. Then there were imported flowers, celebrity photographers, designer catering packages, custom lighting installations, and a live band flown in from another state. I remember sitting at our kitchen table while Michael nervously explained the situation, clearly embarrassed to ask for help. Before he even finished speaking, Carol squeezed my hand under the table because she already knew what we would do. We gave them nearly $120,000 from retirement savings. Money accumulated over decades of discipline, overtime shifts, canceled vacations, and practical living. Carol said, "It's for Michael's future memories." She genuinely believed love meant giving without keeping score. The problem is that some people mistake generosity for weakness when they never earned the sacrifice themselves. The months before the wedding became exhausting. Carol practically worked like unpaid staff, organizing seating charts, coordinating vendors, calming Vanessa during emotional breakdowns over flower shades and linen textures. Yet somehow Vanessa still treated her like a nuisance. She'd criticize Carol's clothes, mock her outdated phone, and make passive-aggressive remarks about older people not understanding modern elegance. One afternoon, I overheard Vanessa telling bridesmaids that she worried Carol would look too plain beside her wealthy relatives in wedding photographs. I wanted to confront her immediately, but Carol begged me not to create tension before the wedding. "Michael loves her," she kept saying quietly. "I don't want him stuck in the middle." But the truth was he'd already chosen the middle by refusing to defend his mother consistently. The wedding day itself looked like something from a luxury magazine. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, waiters carrying champagne on silver trays. Vanessa floated around greeting wealthy guests, while Carol quietly fixed problems behind the scenes because several vendors arrived late. Even in her formal dress, my wife spent half the afternoon carrying supplies and helping staff. About an hour before the reception started, I walked toward the hallway near the bridal suite looking for Carol because guests were asking where Michael's parents were seated. That's when I heard Vanessa speaking inside the partially open doorway to two bridesmaids. "I swear Michael's mother keeps hovering everywhere," she said with an irritated laugh. "It's honestly embarrassing sometimes. She acts like this is some small-town church wedding." One bridesmaid chuckled awkwardly while the other stayed silent. Then Vanessa continued, "I just hope she doesn't try making emotional speeches tonight. We're trying to keep the event classy." I stood frozen in the hallway, feeling my stomach turn cold. Before I could react, Carol stepped out from the opposite side, carrying a garment bag. She had heard every word, too. The look on her face still haunts me because it wasn't anger. It was humiliation mixed with disappointment, so deep it seemed to physically age her in seconds. Vanessa noticed us immediately and went pale. She tried laughing nervously and saying we misunderstood, but Carol simply handed her the garment bag calmly and whispered, "Your reception shawl needed steaming." Even after being insulted, she'd still finished helping her. That's the kind of woman my wife is. Vanessa mumbled something about stress and wedding pressure before rushing away. I turned toward Carol expecting tears or outrage, but instead she just quietly asked, "Do you think I really embarrass him?" That question nearly broke me, because no mother who sacrifices her life for her child should ever wonder whether she's become a source of shame to them. I told her absolutely not, but deep down I was furious with Michael too, because disrespect grows comfortable when nobody stops it early. The ceremony proceeded normally, but I couldn't focus on anything except the way Carol forced smiles through obvious pain while guests complimented decorations she secretly helped pay for. Then came the reception speeches. Vanessa's father stood first, giving a long, dramatic toast about family legacy and generosity, while conveniently ignoring the fact that he contributed barely a fraction of the actual wedding costs. Guests applauded politely. Then Michael gave emotional thanks to Vanessa for bringing elegance and refinement into his life. Not once did he mention his mother specifically, despite everything she'd done. I looked over at Carol, sitting quietly beside me, pretending not to be hurt, and suddenly something inside me hardened permanently. When a master of ceremonies announced it was finally my turn to speak, the ballroom applauded warmly as I walked toward the stage. Vanessa smiled with visible relief, probably expecting another polite speech about love and happiness. I took the microphone slowly and looked around the room for several seconds before speaking. "Tonight," I began calmly, "I've heard many beautiful speeches about elegance, class, and family image." The room quieted immediately, but I think people should know what actually built this wedding. Vanessa's smile disappeared instantly. Michael looked confused. I continued anyway. "The flowers you admire tonight? My wife paid for them. The venue? Mostly paid by my wife and me. The catering, photography, music, honeymoon suite, transportation, decorations, and half the guest accommodations? Also paid by the woman someone here privately called embarrassing earlier today." You could hear forks dropping across tables. Vanessa's face turned completely white. Michael stared at me in absolute shock because clearly he hadn't known about the comment. I looked directly toward my wife then. Carol spent 40 years sacrificing for her family without ever demanding recognition. She worked double shifts, gave up dreams, postponed retirement, and emptied savings accounts so her son could stand in this ballroom tonight surrounded by luxury. The room had become completely silent now. So if kindness, sacrifice, loyalty, and unconditional love are embarrassing qualities, I said firmly, then maybe this world has forgotten what class actually means. Several guests started clapping softly, then louder. I saw tears forming in Carol's eyes, while Vanessa looked like she wanted the floor to open beneath her. Michael finally stood up and walked directly toward his mother in front of everyone. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Mom, did she really say that?" Carol tried protecting Vanessa, even then, mumbling that emotions were high and misunderstandings happened, but Vanessa's silence answered for her. Michael turned slowly toward his bride with a look I had never seen before. Not anger exactly. Disillusionment. Like someone finally seeing a truth they'd ignored too long, because confronting it felt inconvenient. The rest of the evening collapsed quietly after that. Guests whispered constantly. Vanessa barely spoke. Her parents avoided eye contact with everyone.